Hey guys, welcome back. Today, I'm standing outside of Ankara, Turkey at the MKE ammunition factory plant. You may not know MKE ammunition by that name. You probably know it as ZQI. This is where the popular ammunition that's sold at Walmarts across the United States is manufactured. We're going to go inside and take a look around and show you what goes into manufacturing ZQI ammunition. Now, I apologize ahead of time. It's a little bit loud in there, but I think you're going to like what you see. All right guys, this is where it all begins. This hopper right here holds some brass pellets. These brass pellets are going to go through the machine that's behind me, and what's going to come out on the other end is a completed brass casing that's ready to be loaded into a fireable cartridge. So let's take a look at this line. It's really, really cool. These pellets come down here, they go into this first machine. This machine's going to take that copper slug and stretch it out into a cylindrical shape. You can see what's going on in here right now. So it's punching that brass pellet and turning it into a longer piece of, it's going to look more like a cartridge at this point. What we see here is actually scrap material that's left over. The punched out cartridge comes over into here. Here's the control panel that shows the temperature at which this machine is working. It's showing 48 degrees Celsius. Those cases I was talking about get spit out right here. So as you can see, it's still got a plug on one end, but it's starting to take the shape of a 5.56 cartridge. It has a lot more to be done to it yet. It's going to continue on down to this machine. And in here it's going to wash the case off a little bit. It goes through a cleaning process before it goes into the next step. And here you can see it started to change color just a little bit. It's become a slightly darker color after the annealing process and that first cleaning step. From here, it's going to go into an acid bath. This is sulfuric acid. It's going to clean the case one more time. This whole system here is for that acidic bath. And again, what comes out on the other end is still a cylindrical case that's taken a slightly different hue, slightly different color. It's still plugged on one end. And now it's going to go through a whole bunch of steps to form this into a final cartridge case. After the acid bath, the casings come into this machine and several processes are done to that casing. Now it's really going to start to take form. It's going to have a neck, it's going to have a primer pocket, and it's going to have a flash hole. It's not complete, but it's starting to look like an actual cartridge case. So here are those steps the machine takes. As I said, you can see it starts to take the final shape of a cartridge. And it is actually putting the flash hole and primer pocket in there. But still, this isn't quite complete. After it comes out of this machine, though, it goes through a QA checkpoint. Random cases will be pulled out and checked to make sure that they're in specification. But this isn't the only QA step. There's several more that we're going to show you that are also automated. In my left hand here, I have casings that have just finished being basically shaped. They have their necks, primer pockets. They've gone through the QA process, the very first QA step. The next machine that they're going to go into is basically a big tumbler. It has corn media in there, and it's going to take this tarnished looking case and make it all shiny like you see here. All of that's being done by this machine right here. After the casings are actually cleaned up and they're polished, they come into here and the final steps are taken to clean up the flash hole, to trim the case to length, and to get it ready for final loading. They come down here. This next machine is an automated QA machine. So what this machine is doing is it's taking these cases and it's measuring them and making sure that they meet specification. If they don't meet specification, they're rejected and kicked out into the bin down here. If they pass this automated QA check, they go on to the next stage which is another annealing process. They come down to this machine, they're moved through. This device right here gets very, very hot. It's annealing the case, and this is what gives that case coloring at the end of the case that you see on a cartridge. The last step in the process is one more QA check. This is performed visually by an actual person. You can see the mirror here, and it's rotating or turning the cartridges. This inspector is making sure that there are no defects before these cases are finally sent to assembly into a cartridge. This is the reject bin, and you'll find small, even in this cartridge, he's looking so carefully, I can't see the reject reason for this one. But you'll see nicks or dings or something that doesn't quite fit specification, and the case will be rejected. But here you can see that final annealing process I was talking about, this different coloration on the neck. After this stage, the casing is dumped into this bin, and it's ready to be taken off to be loaded into a complete cartridge. This machine produces the tungsten steel penetrator for the 762x51 NATO cartridge that is manufactured here at MKE. These are the tungsten steel rods that will be chopped up into the steel penetrators. The rods are fed into the machine, they're cut and shaped, and a spit out penetrator appears on the other side. MKE manufactures every component of their ammunition here in-house. What I'm holding in my hand, in my left hand, is the cup. This is the copper cup that will ultimately be formed into an M80 ball round or 7.62 NATO. In my right hand is a formed lead slug, which will be set into these cups to finally form that 7.62 NATO ball round. After the recent ATF ruling or proposed ruling that would ban M855 ball, there was a controversy out there whether or not the ZQI ammunition, the 5.56, had steel penetrators in it or not. It does. The 62 grain M855 ZQI ammo does have the penetrator. I'm holding some of the penetrators right here in my hand, and behind me is the machine that manufactures the penetrator itself. These are the two components of the M855 ball that's loaded into ZQI ammo. This is the penetrator, and this is the lead slug that sits behind it. These two components would be wrapped in a copper jacket and loaded into the cartridge. The machine behind me takes the bullet cup and the lead bullet core. This is for a 7.62 NATO. It goes in over here, and what comes out on the other side is a bullet ready to be loaded into a case. So now we have our prepared cases. It's time to start the loading process. The machine behind me takes that first step. This machine seats the primer. It not only seats the primer, but it applies the sealant, which is this green color around the primer, and also then puts sealant inside the neck for the bullet. The next step is to put powder in here. Now that we have the primer in the case and the sealant applied, this machine takes the powder, which comes in from here, takes the brass casing, which comes in over here, and the bullets, which come in from here, brings them down in here, and it seats the bullet in the powder, and then bring the bullet out this way. Every single bullet that comes out of this machine is weighed. If the bullet is not the proper weight, meaning most likely it doesn't have a powder charge, it's rejected, and it goes into this bin. All the approved rounds that have passed that last QA check are spit out as a final M80 ball round. The very last step in the quality assurance is the visual inspection of the loaded cartridge. Every single cartridge is inspected before it's taken to packaging, where it's boxed up and shipped to the United States. This is the last step in the process. This is where we're packaging the completed cartridges into their boxes. The rounds come in on this conveyor belt. They're picked up 10 at a time and sat into the box. This is a 5.56 millimeter line, so each box has 30 rounds. It comes down here. Each box is weighed to make sure there's exactly 30 rounds, which takes place right here. If it's a round short, it gets rejected. The ones that are approved come on down here, and they're placed into the final packaging, which is ready to be shipped out. I've actually been quite impressed with the number of quality assurance checks that take place during the manufacturing of the ammunition here at MKE. Now, we've already seen that on the assembly line, a number of checks take place, but a sample set of those products are brought into this laboratory that's behind me for more scientific testing. This is one of the many quality control checkpoints. What this gentleman's doing is taking a look at a annealed case under a microscope, looking for crystallization of the brass after the heat treating. This is probably one of the more interesting tests. What they've done is they've taken some sample rounds, placed them in water, and then this dome over it allows them to create a vacuum. They're going to suck all the air out of this dome, and then they're going to look for bubbles coming out of the cartridge cases. If they find problems, they go back to that line and pull those rounds and check them for quality once again. In this test, what's going to happen is they're going to take a completed cartridge, place it in the machine, and it's going to grab the bullet and pull the bullet out of the case, and it's measuring how much force is required to extract the bullet from the case.
You have just seen, I think, some parts of our production line. Every day we take some samples from this line to measure ballistic properties of our production, such as velocity, such as precision, accuracy, or function and casualty tests. We take our test samples from the production line and examine them if there is visual defect or not, or dimensional defect or not. According to, of course, some standards, some visual or dimensional standards. Firstly, we perform the visual inspection. In order to check if there is dimensional problems such as cracks, dents, and loose primer. This is the gauge for depth primers. We measure this gauge profile, full profile of the cartridge.
One of the most common questions asked about ZQI ammunition is to what standards is the ammunition tested to? A lot of people, of course, in the United States know what SAMI specifications are. However, all the ZQI ammunition is tested to NATO standards. NATO standards are used by all NATO nations. So when you purchase ZQI ammunition, you're purchasing, in essence, NATO standard ammunition that's capable of being fired in all NATO firearms, from our own M16 to HK-33s to G36s to whatever the rifle may be. NATO specifications are used when testing the MKE ammunition, which is imported under the ZQI brand. Several things are tested: pressure, action time, and I'll explain that here in a moment, and velocity. Now, action time is the moment the primer ignites until the bullet leaves the barrel. They test that here, and it is a NATO testing standard. Now, another thing that I should point out is you cannot compare SAMI specifications to NATO specifications. There's no conversion. It's because the measurements are taken at different points in the chamber and test facilities, so they're not comparable. So let's take 9mm for example. Under NATO specifications, a 9mm round with, say, a 124 grain ball is going to be in the pressure range of SAMI standard pressures and plus P pressures, but the NATO specification will never reach plus P SAMI standards.
These two chambers are our conditioning chambers. If there is any requirement regarding with the temperatures, such as low temperature or high temperature, we put test samples into these chambers and keep them specified duration and specified temperatures. According to NATO standards, we use 3 different conditioning temperature. The first one is 21 degrees Celsius. The second one is plus 52 degrees Celsius, and the last one is the minus 54 degrees Celsius. That's all. We perform in these channels function and casualty tests. During the test, we load our related gun up to this firing range, and we load the test samples and we fire. During the test, we observe the function. We check if there is malfunction or not. At the same time, we collect, after test, we collect empty cases and examine them if there is visual defect, non-acceptable visual defect, such as loose primer, gas escapes, and cracks, horizontal or vertical cracks.
I hope you guys enjoyed taking a tour of the MKE ammunition factory where ZQI ammunition is manufactured. If you guys haven't checked out ZQI ammunition, I highly recommend you do that. Swing by, pick up a few boxes and try it out. I think you'll like it. We spent all day on the floor today shooting video. My feet are tired and I've been craving some Turkish tea, which I have here. I'm going to take a sip of this. It's really good stuff if you haven't had it.